Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. We're going to be getting into an article from January 2023 in the Journal of Cell Metabolism. Cardiometabolic health improvements upon dietary intervention are driven by tissue-specific insulin-resistant phenotype. A precision nutrition trial. What the heck does that mean for you, a Fasting for Life listener? Well, we're going to dive into two different buckets of weight loss, aka insulin resistance, and how fasting and nutrition choices can tap into those long-term fat stores. Once and for all, help you get the weight off, keep the weight off, and get those long-term health results you've been looking for. So if you are a new listener to the pod, welcome in. If you want to know more about how fasting transformed our lives and why we do what we do week in and week out here on the Fasting for Life podcast, head back to episode 0, episode 1. Give them a listen. In under 30 minutes, you'll know why we do what we do, why we have our challenges and our resources and our in these podcast episodes each and every week to help you make these long-term changes and get off that diet, health, weight loss roller coaster that we've all been on for so many years. So welcome in. If you are a long-term listener, thank you so much for the continual support, rates, reviews, downloads, shares, comments, messages, all the things, the interaction that we have with you guys. We're truly grateful. Over 5 million downloads up until this point. Could never imagine, reaching so many people and all the amazing success stories we hear. So incredibly grateful that you're on this Fasting for Life journey with us. And we're still working on these things as well. So today's conversation, Tommy, is going to be, I want to kind of set the frame on what the study showed and what it doesn't show, and then why we're going to be continually focusing on insulin production, insulin resistance, blood sugar management, and all of the things that come along with a fasting or weight loss lifestyle. Because we don't want you just to lose the weight. We want you to keep it off and then get the long-term health benefits of doing so.
Yeah, and accelerate the process and do it in the most efficient manner. So we don't have to wait for those results. We don't have to, wade through more of the, let me try this. And then you go about it for the next couple of months and then realize it's not really working that well for you. Maybe I could be doing it better, maybe not. And sometimes it's just those little question marks, those little seeds of doubt, or a little bit more frustration that can actually throw you off track and be demotivating for the long term too. So when we start to dial in, especially when we get new data like this that helps us be more specific to our individual issues, then we can really accelerate the process. And when we do that, it really becomes even more motivating because we can see results more consistently over time. And we can drop things like fear of regain and those and having a tough time talking to loved ones or friends and family who may not be all that supportive of a fasting lifestyle, especially at the beginning, but some extra confidence when things are moving better gives us kind of that extra dose of confidence that kind of helps us navigate some of those tough situations and the temptation when you come face to face with the pantry or with the fridge when you have a fasting timer set. And so a little bit of extra confidence and extra willpower, extra motivation in some of those tough moments can go a long way.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk about insulin resistance. It's not just one condition. We did a pod a while back about the 4 different subtypes of insulin resistance because insulin works on the tissue cell. It's also produced in the pancreas. It's a hormone that interacts with so many different processes in the body. Yep. So insulin resistance, aka weight loss resistance, isn't just one condition. Where it sits changes which food choices are going to make your journey easier and more sustainable. So one of the things we hear often is, what's the best fasting schedule? Oh, well, great, the one that you're going to stick to, right? So how do we customize that to your life and your busyness and your stress and all that kind of stuff? But then the biggest thing that we hear, especially inside of our challenges, is the relationship with food, the food choices, the food decisions. How should I eat? And we're not big proponents of meal plans, air quotes, right? Meal plans, because the food experience and your relationship with food is typically, we'll find a lot of halt the BS, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, bored, stressed, and we go to food and the dopamine we get from it, right, to soothe those reactions and those decisions and those emotional things in time. So making these changes and being able to have some guidelines on what foods are going to feed and fuel you as an individual, as a faster, is really powerful. So what they looked at here was 242 people in a randomized trial, matching the diet to two subgroups. We've got muscle-specific or liver-specific insulin resistance. Most of you are going to listen to this, and we're hopefully going to deliver it in a way where you're going to have an outcome, and we'll have a small resource for you in the notes as well, to put yourself mainly in one of these two buckets. There will be some overlap, but we're going to clearly outline the two different types here. So we have the muscle-specific or liver-specific insulin resistance and how that shows up you on your body and in how you feel on a day-to-day basis with your fasting and nutrition choices. So the primary outcome in this study, however, did not move. So I'll talk about that in a second. So insulin resistance isn't one condition. It can sit mainly in muscle or mainly in liver, and the two types respond differently. And that episode we did before, the 4 buckets of IR, Tommy, you just mentioned it, was episode 302. So what we want to do with this one is match the diet to the tissue that it's helping. So the muscle group did better on higher protein and higher fiber. The liver IR did better on higher monounsaturated fats, so healthy fats. But the primary outcome was null. So the endpoint did not move. So this is a signal, not a verdict. So what did improve? All the secondary markers: insulin sensitivity, glucose, triglycerides, CRP, inflammation markers. So this is a proof of concept out of this single 12-week trial. And the tissue driving your insulin resistance may change which diet or nutrition choices you make and which it helps. So what we want to do here is give you some tools to try this out at home and adapt it into your lifestyle, right?
Yeah, and we can extend that, go a step further when we're thinking about which is the best fasting schedule for me. What should I be doing for my day-to-day and my week-to-week fasting? It's going to be the same thing where we can adapt that based on where we feel the most impact, whether it's more in the liver or more in the skeletal muscle. So it's nice to be able to take some of these primary movers, these primary levers, and adapt it based on our own phenotype, what we observe on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. So that organ phenotype is what you just match, right? So in the first segment, we're going to go over insulin resistance just isn't one thing, right? Because when you think insulin resistance, if you've been listening for a while, you know that that's the hormone that controls how your body stores and burns fat, or uses fat, or loses fat, or the visceral adiposity, that metabolically active fat tissue. So the study's looking at more of like where this is located in the body. Is it muscles or is it liver? And when we have the muscle insulin resistance, muscles don't respond well to insulin. There's a breaking point of how it fit your insulin sensitivity, so to speak. So after you eat carbs, glucose doesn't move into the muscles efficiently. Blood sugar hangs around longer after meals. We'll talk about what symptoms that shows, how that feels on a day-to-day basis. And then the liver insulin resistant group, the liver ignores the insulin slow down signal. So it keeps putting glucose and fats into the bloodstream. So you're going to see more volatile blood sugar numbers, higher fasting blood sugar, higher A1C, more triglycerides, even when you're doing some type of fasting. Now, I fall into this category mainly because that was me doing keto and intermittent fasting back in the day, right? So same label, insulin resistant, but different organs that are misbehaving with their interactions with insulin. And that's going to set the stage for why one recommendation helps an individual and kind of backfires or makes it more difficult for the other.
Yeah, which is a little bit surprising whenever you're trying something that it sounds like this should work. It seems like it works for everybody else. everybody else kind of has good results, maybe either like going low carb or maybe going carnivore or, eat less, move more. But for some reason, it doesn't seem to be working for me, or I'm doing really well with my fasting and I'm just not seeing the needle move all that much. My blood sugar's hanging around, or I'm feeling really terrible after I break my fast. That's something that we hear very, very often. And so to understand why is because our physiology is different, because our pathophysiology is different. The biochemistry that's going on and where we're feeling our actual insulin resistance that can be at the core of a lot of these issues like weight loss resistance. But still to understand that those symptoms can show up in different ways in different tissues for individuals is really, really powerful.
Yeah, so the people whose main issue was more and we'll give you the characteristics here, the muscle insulin resistance did better on low fat, higher protein, higher fiber. People whose main issue was liver insulin resistance did better on higher monounsaturated fats, so healthy fats, leaner proteins, and less refined processed carbs. So same 2 diets, same 12 weeks, same level of insulin resistance at the start. The difference was, did the food choices I'm making help or hinder my progress, is what I just heard you say.
Mm-hmm.
So how well the pancreas is working and how well your muscle cells are responding to the insulin that's being produced or being muted by the food choices that we make. Because we hear this all the time. The fasting part's the easy part. The hard part is the fueling, my relationship with food, the foods that I typically want to go to and snack on and graze on and all those different types of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is basically like a proof of concept. This is like we're able to see within the study, hey, we can at least separate into a couple of different groups, because coming off of that episode 302, it was like, hey, this is groundbreaking where we're seeing a correlation here within these 4 different main buckets. But the trickier part is like self-identifying those buckets, because they used a lot of high-end supercomputing to analyze the blood sugar curves and different physiological responses to actually put people into those buckets. Whereas this more simplification into 2 buckets rather than 4 means that we can actually do this with observational data for ourselves and then actually take some serious action after that. So this is great.
So here's like kind of the 3 main structural takeaways. So we're going to stop hunting for perfect nutrition, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 people with the same fasting glucose and A1C might generally need different macronutrient patterns after their fasts. My wife and I did genetic gene SNP testing back in the day, and part of the protocol was to give you, hey, what does your body respond better to from a macronutrient standpoint? My wife did better with protein and carb. I did better with protein and fat. And it made sense if we looked back at the changes and the things that we were doing from a dietary management standpoint, lifestyle management standpoint. Mm-hmm. So fasting is a tool that lowers the insulin exposure, but post-fast eating still matters, and this is where the differences may show up. The second takeaway is more think in terms of where my system is most overloaded. So do you mostly struggle with high fasting numbers and stubborn belly fat? That's more liver driven. Or you feel pretty good fasting but crash hard after breaking your fast or carb heavy meals with big post-meal blood sugar swings. That's more of the muscle uptake driven, right? So this is just pattern spotting, not diagnosing by any means. And then the third takeaway is that fasting is the base. The food choices is the fine tuning, because fasting will help both groups, muscle and liver, by giving them a break from constant insulin signaling.
Yeah, regardless of the tissue.
Regardless of where it's going after that, right? Mm-hmm. But the food, the more protein and fiber, less fat for someone who's more in the muscle group, versus the quality fats and being mindful of the total carbs for someone who fits more of the liver pattern.
Yeah. And that starts to make sense when we think about what are we doing essentially, like as we're getting into our fast and we're staying there, not just sporadically fasting, but we're fast cycling. We're fasting with intention. What are we trying to do? We're trying to stay on the right side of ketosis more often than not. So
yeah, to tap into those long-term fat stores and stop burning the sugar.
Absolutely. And if most of the insulin resistance issue is in your liver, then what you want to do is be mindful and be supportive of the biochemistry that's going on within the liver, which means being more fat adapted and keeping more in that ketogenic state. Means that you're eating very specifically after your fast, and if you don't, you're likely to not feel great. And you should take that as feedback, because that's one of those things. Does it get better over time? It can. It can bit by bit, but usually that getting better over time is a matter of the layers of insulin resistance kind of peeling back. So that does take time.
Yeah, and I forgot to give a shout out to Dr. William Wallace, and I'm sure he gets this all the time, but every time I see his name, he's a great follow. William Wallace, I always think of Freedom, Braveheart, So I'm sure he gets that. So sorry, bud. I appreciate the work that you do. And this is where I saw this post, and then I went and read the article, and I was like, man, this could be really big for that begin with the end in mind, long-term sustainability. Like, how do we adapt our day-to-day to a long-term success plan? Because if you tell me the best way for me to lose weight is to eat less, move more, and this happened when we did our genetic testing, I was still doing it by 3 meals plus snacks in a pre-bed protein, casein protein yogurt bowl, right?
Yep.
Or rice cakes with peanut butter. So I was still stimulating that insulin response, even though I was using the information from the genetic test to say, hey, your macronutrients, your food that you're choosing is what you're doing right. I wasn't addressing the underlying cause of the weight loss resistance, which is that insulin signaling.
Yeah. So the pressure was still on all of the tissue.
So I was looking at it from the insulin standpoint, but I was still applying it from the counting calorie, tracking macro standpoint. And you need to do both in some cases, but we'll make this more simple right now. By which bucket do you fall into? So we're going to do bucket 1, and then we'll go into bucket 2. So this is more of the muscle type insulin resistance. So this is going to be the big post-meal swings. You feel okay fasting, but certain food choices, carb-heavy meals, leave you kind of like wired, but then like crashy and exhausted. Or you'll see big swings if you're using a finger stick, blood glucose monitor, or a CGM. Sure. You'll see those big spikes post-meal. And then carbs, this is the group that also has an interesting relationship with carbs. Carbs feel like a roller coaster. Pasta, bread, sweets, when you do have those things, make you feel foggy or sleepy. Even though your fasting your blood sugar numbers might look fine or even just slightly elevated. So this is where there was some overlap in the two groups, because I had this even though I'm primarily the liver group, not the muscle group. Right?
Yeah, I also used to have that a lot. I don't anymore, but I remember how it feels though.
Yep. So then the third, so big post-meal swings, carbs feel like a roller coaster. There's another what's the word I'm looking for?
Symptom?
Symptom is of this group, of how it shows up in your day-to-day, is a strong activity response. So like a bout of exercise, lifting, walking, or a workout noticeably improves how you feel after meals or your blood sugar on your CGM. So it's kind of like moving your body changes the way your muscles handle glucose quickly, and you can feel that response.
Yeah, because you're activating that big glucose sink in your body. And so if you are one of the muscle type insulin resistance, and that's where I fell more back in the day, I think that was part of why I was driven towards more frequent exercise. I just didn't feel
you just
well.
Felt better.
I felt so much better with consistent exercise. And I mean, sometimes just spending a couple of hours in the gym would feel good. I wasn't addressing some of the the macronutrient actual like optimization. I didn't know anything.
Yeah, we didn't
about
know that.
back then, and I also wasn't controlling for the insulin response too, because like you said, I was quote unquote stoking my metabolism 4, 5, 6 times a day, depending on the actual season and within part of my diet and things like that. But all the while knowing that when I exercised, I definitely felt better.
Yep. So big post-meal swings, carbs feel like a roller coaster, strong activity response, you feel better after. And this is an anthropometric one. Weight is not all central. So you kind of carry your weight more diffusely, hips, thighs, overall, rather than almost all in the belly. Right? So the deposition of the weight on your body is more diffuse. And then this is a big one in each group. The post-meal symptoms, how you feel, energy wise is greater than how you feel in the morning. Meaning, if you were going to talk to your spouse or a friend and be like, you complain more about how you feel after eating than how you feel first thing in the morning.
Well, that's a big one. That really reveals something right there, because I mean, there are big differences when you're describing like, man, I feel like I crash after my meals, or
Yep.
it's tough to get out of bed in the morning. I feel, stiff and puffy and things like that. So those post-meal symptoms, yeah, that is such a big one. And we hear that in the challenges, we hear that in coaching as well. There's a subgroup that just, man, that just feels like the biggest struggle is I don't feel well after I break my fast.
Yep. Yep. And then, so overall for this group, right? So big post-meal swings, carbs feel like a roller coaster, strong activity response, weight's not all central, post-meal symptoms are greater than how you feel in the morning if you were to complain to a friend, spouse, or loved one. So for this group, the study is saying higher protein and fiber with lower total fat, right? And low to moderate carbs, because you get that carbs feel like a roller coaster feeling, right? So you might have that cravey response to those things too. So bucket 2 is more of the liver type insulin resistance. So this is where, as a listener, you might resonate with this pattern: stubborn fasting numbers. So you have higher fasting glucose on past labs or CGM readings, or if you've been doing a finger blood spot tests, finger stick tests. So even when you feel like you did everything right, your numbers are still elevated. So you've got stubborn fasting blood sugar numbers. You've got belly-centric weight gain. So most of your extra weight seems to sit in the abdomen and waist area, that classic apple pattern. You have a history of elevated liver enzymes, fatty liver, or high triglycerides. This was me. Blood pressure was creeping up, liver enzymes are creeping up. Belly, looked like a strong man in the off season from my powerlifting days. My triglycerides were elevated, and my wife and one of her nutrition friends was like, "Is your husband like sneaking fast food and eating Pete?" And I was like, "No, we just hired this nutritionist in Houston, and we did a 6-month program with him and spent thousands of dollars." I couldn't figure it out. So history of those liver enzyme changes, high triglycerides, because you have more of a metabolic syndrome type marker. Right? Some of those lab markers that will put you into the category of metabolic syndrome, which then ultimately, where we started with the study was, how do these changes affect cardiometabolic outcomes, which is, of course, we want to decrease the incidence and chance of predispositions or presentations of heart disease. So the liver is right in the primary spot here. The next one is less obvious kind of post-meal swings. So you don't really feel dramatic crashes or highs or lows post-eating. The issue to you kind of feels more like a chronic all-day sluggishness rather than a sharp kind of energy change linked to your meals when you break your fasts.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Kind of just that fog, about you.
Yeah, this was me. And this is where I was getting dependent on, double quad espressos.
That's what I was going to just say, yep.
Naps at lunch, and
you can find yourself just chasing caffeine throughout the day, which tends to mask that symptom temporarily, at least. And then usually it just comes, just fading, just reappearing right back into the picture.
Yep. And then here's the differentiator. The morning feels more rough. So waking up feels harder, stiff, puffy, slow to get moving, and you often feel better later in the day once you've been up and about. Comparing it to the muscle group, which was your post-meal swings are greater than your morning, kind of how you feel in the morning, right?
Yeah, I wonder if there's a sleep component to this too, where it almost feels like if the morning time is tough, then what I find for myself, and listeners, tell me if you resonate with this, would be sleep is so paramount to how I'm going to feel in the morning. Whereas when I was feeling more of the muscle insulin resistance bucket, it was just less important. And so now protecting sleep means much earlier meal, or skipping that dinner means that I'm probably going to wake up feeling less puffy, less slow to kind of get moving. So sleep feels like it might be even more important for this second bucket than the first bucket. What do you think?
Yeah, so you read my mind. This is exactly where I was going to go with. So if I
Mm.
notice that like I'm traveling, my sleep goes off, maybe I've had a couple of my wife just had a birthday, like and eating a meal out, which we
Hmm.
don't eat out a lot. We do a lot of meals at home. Um, if I notice that, and maybe my fasting hasn't been as consistent, or the holidays, like when the external environment changes and some slippage starts to happen with my fasting,
Yeah.
I can fall right back into the mornings feel rough.
Yep.
I notice like I feel a little puffy in the morning, feel a little inflamed,
Hmm.
right? I just kind of feel sluggish throughout the day. I'm feeling that craving for that 1 to 3 p.m. caffeine hit, which then will screw up my sleep. So I really, really, really stop the caffeine between latest 12 to 1.
Yeah, grab a decaf at that point, like in the
Right.
afternoon. It'll help kind of, scratch the itch without messing up the sleep pattern.
Yep. So these are anecdotal stories of how it's showing up, but this is the classic signs and symptoms. These aren't lab confirmed labels or self diagnoses in any way, but we want to adapt this to your to your fasting lifestyle, which we're going to do now. So now we have the two clearly defined buckets. So more muscle type pattern, bucket one, post meal swings, carb roller coaster, exercise quickly improves how you feel. You feel more volatility in your energy and clarity and energy levels post meals rather than in the morning. You
Mhm.
really want to focus on higher protein, higher fiber, and lower fat, right? So lean meats, fish and seafood, eggs, Greek yogurt, higher fiber, lower fat carbs. So oats, quinoa, brown rice in moderate portions,
Mhm.
right? Those types of things. Starchy veggies are great for this subtype. And things like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, leafy greens, and then fats, keep them present. So healthy olive oil, avocado oil, nut butters, smaller, thin portions of those,
Mhm.
smaller portions of cheese, nuts, and seeds. So if you're more of a muscle pattern person, think big protein, big fiber, moderate carbs, and lighter on the healthy added fats in your eating windows.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about the fibrous carbohydrate sources, just like remember the choices that you make in order to, let's say, have a loaded sweet potato rather than putting a couple of pieces of garlic bread on your plate,
Right.
something like that. That you're going to feel the difference there after the meal. It's going to make a substantial difference in how you feel. It's also
Yep.
then going to make the next fast that much easier. Those like try to make one or two better nutrition choices during your nutrition opportunity. Just be intentional with it. It will lead to a better outcome on the other side of that meal, and then going into your next fast. And then we're going to see more consistent, enjoyable results. And when you
Yep.
can
You're
enjoy
going to
the
feel
process
better.
more, yeah, you absolutely you're going to feel better. And when you feel better, you do more. And when you do more, you see more results, and you build momentum in that regard, right?
Yep. So for the liver type pattern, stubborn fasting numbers, belly centric weight, the mornings are tough. You wake up slow and then eventually you get going as the day goes on. Past high triglycerides, elevated liver enzymes, fatty liver, those types of that type of the more liver type pattern. You're going to want to have quality fat sources just like in the previous group. So quality monounsaturated fats, mindful carbs, and obviously prioritizing adequate protein, right? So
Mhm.
similar food choices, just similar different ratios, right? So for your carbs in this group, you want to focus more on starchy veggies and natural forms of carbs rather than grains. If you
Mhm.
do include grains, keep them smaller. That 20% kind of portion on your plate, that visual kind of analogy where you're looking at your plate. Yeah, you still have carbs. We're not against carbohydrates. Well, the refined, processed, sugary ones, those are just a ticking time bomb. But you want to limit the breads, the pastries, the sugary drinks, and those kind of more desserty style carbs most days. And for the veggie category, big variety and big volume, right? So greens, cruciferous veggies, peppers, use them in as like the bulk of the plate, and then you'll have your adequate protein right alongside of them. So if you're more of a liver pattern person, think quality fats, solid protein, carbs in smaller doses, and lots of those non-starchy veggies.
Okay, got it.
Okay, let's talk about fasting and the two different groups and what levers you can pull from a fasting standpoint. So, hang on one second. I have my notes here.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at this for the muscle group, start out with your foundational fast, 16-8, earlier in the day. So this is where, when you're in bucket one, more muscle type, the muscles often respond well when you combine regular movement, adequate protein, and consistent fasting periods. Again, consistency throughout this fasting lifestyle. If you're in this group, too aggressive fasting with short, tiny windows can make it harder to hit those protein targets. So you might not feel as good when you're eating. You don't feel good about the food choices, and then the food doesn't make you feel good. Mm. This is where we want to see the consistent, 3 to 4 times a week of some form of resistance training, walking days, and keep those nutrition opportunities focused on the higher protein, higher fiber. And you want to do this for at least a week to 2 weeks. You want to make this change and stick with it to see how your body responds to those characteristics that we shared earlier for the muscle group, for the muscle pattern. Mm-hmm. So foundational fasting, a couple times a week, extend those fasts, open up those windows a little bit, make sure you're getting your movement in, and you should see some change over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I really like the consideration that exercise is going to be one of your big levers. So getting that glucose sync moving, getting all
those
of
muscles active,
getting your muscles active. So bigger movements, bigger full body stimulation whenever you're going through your exercises, and thinking about that with regards to your fast as well. So what that could mean is, let's say if you were using a 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. nutrition opportunity, and then you tend to feel sluggish after the meal or after your window, I would put my exercise after my nutrition opportunity close. So maybe that's an evening time exercise, or an evening time long post meal walk would be a very, very good
specifically around your biggest meal of the day. Absolutely.
And if you're going to have, let's say you do your big, if you have a gym session or you have something else like that, and you do it early morning, can you get in some nutrition before that session? If not, you'll still do well to push your bigger meal to earlier in the day.
Yep.
So you could have that for a breakfast or for an early lunch, because the afterburn effect from your intense exercise is going to continue to work. So it's not that you have to necessarily exercise right after the meal. It could be before the meal, but then link those two things up as closely as possible, and it will minimize the effects of that post-meal crash.
Yep. So let's compare that to the liver group. Now, this is where I fit into again. So it's bringing me back, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the stubborn fasting blood sugar numbers, belly-centric weight, triglycerides, fatty liver. The mornings are rough, right? Puffy, tired, slow. So the goal here is to use fasting to give the liver longer breaks from processing that incoming energy. So this is where more consistent, I don't want to call it extended fast because that has some different connotations, but really pushing past that foundational to 24. This is where we see people respond really well to that twice a week, 30 to 36 hour fast.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is where you're getting that insulin resistance reversal. You're increasing that insulin sensitivity, right? Mm-hmm. So the longer fasting windows here are going to help reduce that liver traffic, right? And when you do break your fast, you're going to focus on more monounsaturated fats, lower total carb, and higher protein. That's going to give the liver pattern insulin resistance a chance to kind of come down. You're going to see the changes on your labs when you get them redone in 3 to 6 months, mm-hmm. right? So this is where it's like OMAD a day plus a longer fast 1 to 2 times a week. And you want to keep those windows on the quality fats, plenty of non-starchy veggies, and adequate protein, right? So clearly defining the two buckets here is really how do you apply this on a day-to-day? Well, in listening, and you'll see the resource. You can go to the show notes and click the link for the resource as well. You'll see the buckets outlined, how it's showing up. You may have a little bit of overlap, like I mentioned, but 4 out of the 5 of those determining characteristics, you're going to be like, yup, that's me. And then simply just follow the dietary changes. So when you open your fasting, close your fast, geez Louise, when you open your nutrition window and your fast ends, you're going to make some of these plate changes and stick with it for a couple of weeks. And you're going to know almost within a few days, yeah, I'm feeling better. And that's the momentum and the energy that we want to capture. Because regardless of what group you are, regardless if you just dismiss all of this and say, well, the primary outcome of the study didn't change, so is this real? I don't really care. If we just stripped all of that away, it's how you feel.
Right.
It's going to allow you to make better decisions in the moment and ultimately stay more consistent.
You hit the nail on the head. And because just observing which one of these, what makes me feel better, after I break my fast, in the time in between my nutrition opportunities, right? Like during my fast, which one do I feel less of that temptation pool, less of the need to white knuckle? There's probably going to be some things in this conversation that resonate to help make you feel better. When you feel better, you do more, you take more consistent action. And it helps us just enjoy the process. When you can enjoy the process, you get less hyper-focused on the day-to-day volatility and hope on the scale. And then you get more focused on taking the next action, which is then going to lead to the consistency. Because even if you are a more experienced faster, like what I found is being more in bucket 2 at this point in my life, one of the recommendations is, hey, use a 20/4, use like a warrior fast for more of a maintenance. And that's what I find to be the most efficient, the most motivating, the most helpful thing that I can do for maintenance is about a 20 to 21 hour fast. That's my daily foundation. I get enough time to get in good nutrition without enough time to feel like I'm going back into my kind of grazier type habits. And it works. It works really well for me. And it's not what I do every single day, but that's where my foundation is. And that didn't used to be the case, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so just understanding there are things that you are doing that help make you feel better or worse, even if you don't realize it. This is a way to kind of separate, simplify, and then start to self-identify.
Absolutely. So to wrap up, insulin resistance isn't just high insulin. It's where the resistance sits, in the muscle or the liver. When you combine the insights with a solid fasting base, like we talked about for the two groups, 16/8 versus OMAD and those occasional longer fasts, plus the right macronutrient pattern for your bucket, the stuff that you're putting on your plate, you turn your fasting from a generic tool, weight loss tool, into a personalized strategy that fits your physiology rather than forcing your body to try to fit into somebody else's plan. So first rule of fasting, don't talk about fasting. Second rule of fasting, don't talk about fasting. Unless you're listening to this podcast or you're inside of our Facebook group or one of our challenges or our coaching program, we talk about fasting 24/7, so we break those rules. But go grab the resource, identify which bucket you're in, make those changes, stick with it for a couple of weeks, Tommy, and I am super excited to hear the response from this one. I think it's going to be really impactful. So until next time, we'll see you on next week's episode. Tommy, I appreciate the conversation as always, man. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.